Hi friends, welcome to WebChamp. In this video, I'm going to discuss what is the triggers in SQL. Okay, or we can say that why we need triggers. So if you are working with the transactional database, lots of transactions are happening. We may play around the data to delete, to insert the data, to update the data. Different types of actions we can perform on the data using the SQL. But in a response to that action, if you want to do something automatically, you can define the trigger. Trigger is nothing but store procedure, but that calls automatically when something happens on the specified database table or view. The purpose of trigger is to enforce the business rules, maintain the audit trails. Even we can perform the some automate. We can automate the system task also. Right. So there are few types of triggers after trigger, instead of trigger, and even there is something called DDL triggers. Then there is something called log on triggers also. When user try to log in that case, triggers can be executed. So the advantage is automation. You can do automation, data integrity. Even you can enforce the business rules at the database level. You can execute the SQL commands at the back end to perform something. Audit and security log changes and prevent unauthorized actions. Right. So basically, we use the DML triggers, that is the insert, update, and delete operation triggers. So first trigger is before insert. Okay. So if you are inserting a transactional data, someone is trying to update the database for the bank account balance, and in error if that balance entered is in negative, then you need to validate instead of saving. To do this, I mean, before inserting a data, we have to perform the validation. This is what possible using the before insert trigger. We will define the trigger on the database table, and when someone try to insert the data into that, it will perform a checks. Whatever the rules you will define, it will perform a checks, and accordingly it will behave, or it will allow to perform that action. Or if you want to stop inserting a data, you can stop inserting a data. Right. So here, example, you can take any type of table. So if I come here, so let's say this is what my database, and inside this database, so let me select the database is selected. I may wants to create a table. Okay, I will say create table student. This is what my table schema. Then you can, meaning the create table statement, then here you can define the column as a ID, that is of type integer, then name, that is of type varchar, and I will say 100. Right. So this is what small table I have created. So if I go to the tables, you will be able to see that this is what my table I just now created. Okay. So if I try to insert the record, I would like to check whether the ID of that student is null or not. Right. So what we can do, we can obviously insert the data, insert into, then I can say dbo dot student. Okay, so then I will say values, insert into table. This is what my table name, and then I will say values is, let's say, 1, and it's Aditya. Student. Okay, so this name is right. So I will say dbo dot student. Right. So this is type, first data type for ID is int. Incorrect syntax. Okay, this is not a value. It should be a values. And if I run this, so data got inserted. Now I can fetch. I will say select star from, and this is the output, right? So I successfully inserted a row, but at the time of inserting a row, I would like to validate the data. My student ID should not be a null, right? And to create that, obviously, I mean, this should happen automatically when I insert the data. So what I will do from my end, I am going to trigger this command, and database is going to call the another command, and that command, or that store procedure, is nothing but triggers. That will be triggered automatically based on the action you are performing on the database. So you have to define. So first of all, how to start? Obviously, you are going to create a database object. So I will say create, then type of object. The name is, I will say validate student, right? Then here I will say as, then this is a transaction, or transact SQL, T SQL. I will say begin and end, right? But this is not the sufficient. This is not like as simple like store procedure. So here you are going to say create trigger, but yes, you should specify on which table. So here immediately after the table name, you are going to say dbo dot, then I will say student. Okay, on this table I would like to create a trigger. Okay, fine. The trigger is defined for the student table. Now my interest is to validate the before insertion. So I will say instead of insert. So insert is a command, and instead of inserting, what it should do, it should do this, the one which we are going to specify now. Okay, so whenever we insert the data will get stored into the temporary table that is called inserted. The table is called inserted, right? And internally the table gets created. So first of all, what I need is, I need to declare a variable. So I will say declare at the rate, then I will say id, and which is of type integer, right? So this is the first variable. Then we can define another variable as a name, and again that will be a type of varchar, right? So these two variables we have defined. So now we are going to assign the values, but how to assign the values to these two variables? Okay, obviously we will get the data from inserted. Before inserting a database will store the data, or it will create a temporary table, and that will get stored in this inserted named table. So I will say select, obviously select command you need to use, then because we need to fetch the data from that inserted table. So id is equals to, I will say id is equals to, I will say id, then at the rate name is equals to name, then from inserted table. This is what the table from which we have assigned values to the variable. Now variables are updated. We have a value which is stored inside the variable now. So now next task is I would like to validate. How to validate? Obviously we need to use the conditional statement. So if I say if and if at the rate id is null. Okay, so here id is null. So this is what my condition. If this is true, what I would like to, I would like to do, or I would like to print a message. If this is null, in that case, print id cannot be null. Right. So this is how we started printing a message. Again, here the different transaction is going to start. So we will use begin and end for this one also. Right. So this is how if statement you can write. You just check for the id which is null or not. If it is null, then done. Oh, sorry. If it is null, then give the error message or print the error message. If it is not null, then go ahead and insert the data. So command will comes back again. So insert into dbo dot student. Then I will say values, and here I will specify the value as at id because this is the one which is validated at name, right? And this makes my trigger a sensible when someone try to insert the data. Okay, so not then is there syntax error. Let's say command is different, then if else is there. Okay, if else. So if this is fail, this will get executed. This is how it works. So now let me copy this trigger information on the notepad. So you will be able to see this properly. Right. So this is how we can define the trigger. Once we successfully execute this, this will create a trigger on the student table, and whenever we try to insert the data, it will execute. This trigger will execute automatically to validate the data whether the id is null or not. If it is not null, then and then only database will accept the data, otherwise it will throw error that id cannot be null, right? So this is the one trigger we defined here before insert. So like this we can have the after insert trigger also. So let's say I have a student table and I try to insert this record. The data gets inserted successfully, but I may want to store the information. I may want to store the information when this record gets created, and this will not be stored in the same table. Obviously you can store, but that is better to hide that data. So what we can do is we can, meaning immediately after inserting a data, immediately after inserting a data, we can insert the new record or log information into the another table. So let's say here I have a table called log student, which is going to store the information that when that in the record or when that student record is created, right? So what kind of information we need into that table or log table is employee id and when it is created. So employee id is fine on the student table, which is we are going to define. Then here the command will be trigger command will be or trigger event will be after insert. Then it is fine, we defined id and a name variable. Id we will get, but another variable I need. I don't need the name variable, so I'm just going to remove that. Okay, so here what I need is I need date time, and which is of type date time. I created a date time variable to get the data, and then I am going to assign a value to it directly. So by using the function is equals to get time. So if you want to get the current time of system, you can use get time function. This will return the current date and time for you. So this variable has a value. Okay, this variable we just picked from the inserted. We will check whether this is null or not. If this is not, we are going to insert the data. Okay, so we will insert the data at name. Let me keep this variable because we are going to use the name also. And let me say here 100 is the length of character, then this third parameter. Now so when this trigger will get created, when this trigger will get executed after the insertion of the record happens. So we don't need to insert the data again into the student. So because here why we have inserted, because earlier we were checking the data before inserting, then again I need to insert the data into the same table because values are validated. So here in this case we are not going to validate anything, we are simply going to create a log. So I will say dbo.log student. I would like to insert this information, and here this is the date time, this is the date time. Okay, so log information will have two columns, id and date time. Date time is nothing but current date and time. So this is how we create the after insert trigger. This is a dml trigger. Then next is before delete trigger. So just understand the scenario. Before deleting any record from the table, let's say I'm going to delete the any record of this that student. Okay, I may also create a backup for it, so I can do that using the before delete trigger. So this is again like instead of delete command you are supposed to use, then here you will get the data from the deleted table. The way for insert you will get the data from inserted table, similarly for delete you will get the data from deleted table. Otherwise the structure remains same, but here what we are going to do is we have stopped the execution by using the trigger called instead of or trigger event called instead of. So here at the end of that, meaning once the data is inserted into the student log table, when it is deleted, the delete from student where the roll number, meaning for that roll number you need to execute the same statement again. I mean, this is going to happen only for the instead of trigger or before triggers. you need to perform this, or you need to execute the same SQL statement, the one which you are executing in from the trigger also. So you need to define this is only once. It will be executed whenever you try to insert the record, and this will be executed for each and every row of the database. So after delete trigger, again same, if you want to create a backup after delete, you can create the temp database table is deleted. Then for delete trigger, instead of you can use for delete also. Just this is another command, but yes, the purpose of the instead of and for is same. Okay, so here create a trigger which will log a deleted records. This is fine. Before update, so here instead of update we can use, then after update we can use. So if you want to do something before update, if you want to do something after updates, you can do. Then for update trigger is there. So for update you can define, and you will be able to log the information when an update command is executed. So for is used for both before and after. It's not like that you will be able to use for only for the specific before or after. So you can use the for update, for delete, for insert, for all. So instead of specifying, instead of delete, you can say for delete. Then you can say instead of update, so simply you can say for update. So like this, you can use the for command also, or for and then event name. So this is all about the triggers in SQL. I hope you got the idea what is a trigger, how it can be created, and how it is useful to do something automatically when the data manipulation happens. But same kinds of triggers are also available for the data definition language, but that works differently. So we will see that in our next video. Thank you so much for watching the video. Have a nice day. Please do not forget to subscribe webchamp. Happy learning.